Hello, Brandon.
Hello.
I have a question.
All right.
For those who don't know, what is climate change?
So climate change is the buildup of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And what climate change does is it traps in all the light and all the heat that comes from the sun, and it does not let it leave the atmosphere.
So, Brandon, how do those greenhouse gases end up in the atmosphere?
So what happens is the greenhouse gases were fossil fuels. They're inside fossil fuels that humans dig up and combust. And the combustion of these fossil fuels release the greenhouse gases. Coal mostly releases carbon and sulfur oxide, which carbon dioxide adds to the effect of climate change and helps trap in the heat from the sun in the atmosphere.
So, all these greenhouse gases, do they just come from fossil fuels?
Not necessarily. There's one major hidden producer of greenhouse gases that not many people take into consideration, but that's cows and bulls. Cows and bulls, there's about 1.5 billion on Earth, and each one of these produce 100 kilograms of methane a year. And for those who don't know, methane is actually 23 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So just with all these cows releasing the methane, it's really bad for the.
So, we know what climate change is and how it happens. But what are the effects of climate change?
Well, there's many effects of climate change, and two of them being caused by like the heat itself, droughts and forest fires. For the droughts, many know about California, how they're unable to water their lawns more than 2 or 3 times a week, and that's because they're experiencing heavy drought, and a lot of it's because of evaporating water caused by climate change, and also forest fires. Just recently, Naples had to evacuate part of its location because of climate change caused forest fires.
But what about the rising sea levels? I mean, I know the CO2 that is combusted from the fossil fuels goes into the atmosphere, absorbs the infrared radiation, and heats the earth. And I know that CO2 can also settle onto the glaciers, and that will cause the glaciers to melt. And Arctic ice is a huge problem right now because almost all of it is pretty much gone, and polar bears are losing their habitat. Many other Arctic species are also losing their habitats, and it's just a huge problem.
This is the sea ice melting. This is the loss of habitat, which causes polar bears to be endangered. This is the living polar bear. No ice, no habitat.
Is there anything else that accelerates climate change?
Well, there is one factor that not many know about, and that's the albedo effect. And what that is, it's the sunlight getting reflected off the ice and off the snow. And this really helps to alleviate the heat. But with the heat melting a lot of the sea ice and the snow, it is creating a positive feedback loop where more ice is being melted, so not as much is getting reflected. And this is becoming really bad for the overall climate.
Carbon dioxide isn't really a big deal. You can't even see anything.
Carbon dioxide, you don't really have to see it. The real problem is that we're already at 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere. And scientists have said that 350 parts per million is the limit.
Are there any alternatives to fossil fuels?
Matter of fact, there are multiple.
One being wind power.
Another energy is solar energy.
Wind energy is very useful. How come we're not using it?
Well, wind energy is kind of a hard energy to master because storage and distribution of it is really hard to come by. For example, a lot of the states in the Midwest could supply all of the United States energy needs, but they're unable to distribute it or store it. So I know why we don't use wind energy, but what's wrong with solar energy?
Well, the main problem with solar energy, or the only main problem, is that it's way too expensive. The costs are extremely high.
With all this hoopla that we talk about climate change, is there a final thing you can leave us off with, a final point?
Well, there is. And we can now say that perhaps the climate change problem is the most significant problem that we have on the face of the earth today. And it is also said that there's not one area on the earth that is not affected by climate change.